much for coming today. My name is Erika Binsley, and I just finished the first year of my doctorate at the University of Maryland, where I studied with Greg Muller. Before that, I was a member of the Wichita Symphony, and I also currently freelance in the DC area. So as you can see from this recent photo, I've always had an affinity for technology. It ended up surprisingly helping my musical career because I'm paying for my doctorate by working as a graduate assistant at one of UMD's computer help desks. So the real question that I want to answer today is, why should we have smartphones in the practice room when Facebook and Netflix are much more interesting than practicing co-brush, horn, and D-flat? I think that the advantages far outweigh the downsides. Everybody already has a smartphone. Out of curiosity, who doesn't have a smartphone?
Asked me a month ago. Yes.
The other thing that's really nice about the smartphones is that it's very standardized. Either people tend to have Androids or Apple devices. So unlike computers, there's not really a question of, do you have the system requirements for it? They're very compact and everybody takes them everywhere. So students can no longer use the excuse that they lost their metronome. If they had time to post their selfies to Instagram, they had time to practice their etudes with the drum. And there's new software that's coming out all the time. When I submitted my proposal for this lecture in December, half the apps that I'm going to talk about didn't exist yet. And what's really cool about all these apps, as you'll see on the handout, is all of them cost less than a grande frappuccino. And to handle the distraction issue, you can put it into airplane mode and can't connect to the internet. But personally, I use an iPad for practicing because it doesn't have social media on it. So here's an overview of the tools I wanted to talk about today. It's outlined on the handout, so you can follow along on that. But I realized that most of these apps, they may be outdated within the year. But my real goal today is to inspire you how to think creatively on how we can use a 21st century tool for a 19th century one. The first category of apps is metronomes. There are a lot of them that are available, but my personal favorite is Tempo Advance. It's got the ability to go from 10 beats a minute to 800. And what's really cool about this is that since it goes down so low, it forces you to practice subdivision accurately. So for instance, if you're working on Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony, the low tutti, you can set the metronome to 12 beats per minute, and that will give you 1 beat for every 2 measures. So you can start off, and how this app is set up is there's this outer wheel, which controls the number of beats per measure, and then there's this little inner wheel that lets you decide what the subdivision is for each beat. And over here you can set the tempo. So to start off with our subdivision exercise, you can set it to 12 beats per minute and 8 clicks for each of the 8 beats that are in that 2-measure block. just practice subdividing as he's walking along. And the other thing that's really cool about this app is if you click on each of those circles, you can change the different articulation for it. So you can set something like a 3/4 waltz that has a silent first beat and an accented second beat. And of course, with all metronomes, as Jeff Girl says, you have the party trick that you can impress your friends with of magically turning it into a metronome that only plays off beats. This next app I heard about recently, and it's a lot of fun. What it does is you can choose from a variety of drum beats, and you can set the tempo and the volume level, and this is what it sounds like. But it does have the serious benefit of having a subdivision that actually will help you remember it when you practice without a metronome. This next app is called TimeGuru. So the way it's set up is you can select the number of beats that you want in a measure, and then when you click on one of those, it appears down here. So then what you do is you can click on the circle that's below it to change what the subdivision is. Now the thing that's really cool about this is it's great for setting up mix meters. Other metronomes can do this, but this is the interface that I like the best. And then below that, there's a frequency of random muting. One problem I run into with practicing with the metronome is that it's really easy to become reliant on just reacting to the beat that you're hearing. But with this, you can set the amount of random muting that you have, and then you have to anticipate the beat and subdivide, and you can't just react to it. And then down here, you can set the tempo. So here's what this one sounds like. So this is really helpful for something like the Rite of Spring, where you've got mixed meters galore. And if you set the random muting to 0%, you can use it as a normal metronome. As far as tuners go, the one I like to recommend to my students is called Clairton. It's very, very intuitive. It's got two functions. You can use it as a normal tuner, and you can also use it as a tone generator. But what I think is really cool about this one is that it has a transpose function. So I find that my younger students, they're so good. They diligently practice their music, and then they come to their lesson, and they practice it a partial too low. But if they're practicing with this, then they know what note they're playing, and they're going to practice it on the right partial. And then for older students, the tone generator is really useful for practicing with the drum to work on intonation. But if you're going to buy just one app, I think you should get Tonal Energy. It's a little overwhelming, but it has so many functions. So what you're looking at here is the tuner screen. So you can't quite see it in the picture, but that center circle is a happy face. So when you're in tune, it smiles at you. And like Clairton, it has a transpose function, which is really nice. And and you can adjust the temperament. And let's see what else it can do. Then throughout all the screens of this app, it's got a metronome, so you don't have to pull up a the secondary metronome app when you're using it. Now on this next screen, there's a tone generator. Now what's really cool about this one is you can select the different instrument that you want to use, and you can have multiple notes going at once. So if you had an open fifth, then you can practice tuning your thirds. And what else? You can also adjust the sensitivity on it. So you can have it judge you, based on your intonation within 3 cents or 5 cents or 1 cent. And then the other screen that it has is an analysis that's really quite something to look at. So what you see over here is up here, it charts your frequency. And if you click on this box over here, it'll show the breakdown of your overtone series. And then it also has a tuner that's right here. So as you're going along, you still see a normal tuner. And you can save and record files. But what I think the really cool thing about this is down here, it'll show your waveform. So what it can do is you can look at it and see what the note looks like. And this is really useful for judging your articulations. So here's what a normal note sounds like. So there's a little bit of a front end on it. And then there's an accent, so there's some decay. And then there's a sforzando piano that has a very loud start and then a lot of decay. And in addition to that, it charts your pitch in relation to equal temperament. So it's a lot of stuff to look at. So what I like to do is record it, and then I'll watch it through a couple of times. And one time I might look at the pitch charting, and then the next time I might look at the waveform. So here's a video of what that looks like. Excuse me. So it can be a little chaotic to look at, and like I said, it's really good after you've recorded a mock audition or whatever you're working on to watch it through several times.
So you can record it and then play it back?
Yeah, yeah.
And it will do the analysis during the playback?
Exactly, and it'll even do the analysis if you've got headphones in. You can also load files that you may have recorded somewhere else, and it'll do an analysis on those. So like if you snuck your recorder into an audition, you can actually load the file and it'll do the analysis on that. And I don't know if you've read it, but Ricardo Matosinos wrote a really great article for the Horn Call about using recording as a way to keep tabs on your students while they're on vacation. So with Tonal Energy, or if you want to use a different voice memo app, it's really easy to send and receive audio files. So another great thing you can do with your smartphone is take, my teacher was trying to come up with a good modification on the term selfie, but I'm still working on that. But he was taking pictures of my embouchure. I found when I got to UMD, I developed some weird playing problems, and I didn't really know what it was until Professor Muller one day took that side photo of my embouchure. And I think my words to him were, if I saw a student do that, I'd make them change the embouchure. So then after we realized this was a problem, he kept telling me to move the mouthpiece down more and more and more. I told him I wouldn't be able to play, but he took this picture right here, and I looked at it and was like, wow, that's a really pretty healthy looking embouchure. So I made the adjustment. It was very good, but I would not have done it unless I'd seen these pictures. So in addition to taking still photos of embouchures, you can get really good instant feedback when you're practicing by setting up the video. This is like practicing in front of a mirror, except there's a lot of things you might notice when you're kind of set back from your actual playing. And you can also set the camera at an angle you might not be able to see from a mirror. So over here, I've got a video of my plane from the side. So this is what it sounds like. The quality's not great, but you can actually tell enough stuff to really make a good assessment of what you're doing. And there's a lot of great apps that we can use for the non-playing aspects of practicing. One of my favorites is called Muller translations. So it's a dictionary of basically any phrase or word that you're going to see in a Muller symphony. And you can search on it, you can browse through it, and what's really cool is you can translate an entire Muller symphony in just half an hour. And it's that easy, and I don't know why more people don't do it. And I'm a big fan of the Google Drive apps. So I like to use Google Sheets to keep track of my practicing. So what I'll do is I'll make a document that has my practice material here in the rows, and then I'll have the days as columns. So then as I go through and practice things each day, I'll put a mark in the column to mark the material that I practiced. Then as I listen to a mock audition or just set my goals for the next day, I'll put a different mark in the column for the next day so that I know what I plan to practice. And it was really surprising when I started doing this because sometimes it felt like I'd practiced something yesterday, but it had actually been like 4 days ago. And what's really cool about this is it's really easy to share with others. And you can make sure that, or they can keep tabs on you and make sure you're practicing what you say you are. And Skype is a surprisingly useful tool to us. When I first heard about the concept of Skype lessons, I was really skeptical. I thought the quality wouldn't be any good, you wouldn't be able to see anything. But I've taken a couple Skype lessons, I've taught several, and it's amazing how much can actually be conveyed through the camera and the microphone. What's really cool is that then students who are in remote locations can get lessons with great teachers. Teachers don't have to take time off of teaching work when they're traveling, and then everybody wins. So then the other thing that's really easy if you're taking or receiving Skype lessons is you can handle the payments through PayPal. So you never even need to send a check or anything like that. And on a side note, you can call any number in the world for just 1 cent a minute through Skype. That's very cool. There's a lot of great ear training tools that you can have on your smartphone. So my favorite is called OneNote Ear Training. It's a set of MP3 files that have a piano playing 1, 4, 5, and then 1 chords. Then there will be a random note, and there's a verbal naming of the note. It sounds really simple, but what's really cool about it is it teaches you to hear notes in relation to a key center rather than just listening to the intervals. So this is what it sounds like.
A.
And this is pretty simple, and it's by no means a complete ear training program. But what I like is that you can listen to it while you're doing chores, or at the gym, or driving in the car. So time that otherwise, might not be doing anything productive. And in a similar vein, you can listen to full-length reference recordings on your MP3 player, but you can also create short excerpts of anything that you're working on. So I got the idea from hornexcerpts.org, which I've got a screenshot of here. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. But the problem I have is that you can only use it when you're sitting at your computer. So I wanted to be able to listen to recordings of excerpts while I was driving in the car. So I used a program called Audacity to take some programs or some WAV files. And then what I did was I went just a few bars before the excerpt, and I took a cut and made a new file out of it. And so then I'll listen to this mixtape of my excerpts that I'm preparing for an audition. Then when I go down to actually play the excerpt in the audition, I've got like a few bars of the orchestral accompaniment already going in my head before I start playing it. And this is what one of those sounds like.
And Audacity is free.
Yeah, Audacity's free. And another ear training tool that I heard about recently from a guitarist is called AnyTune. What it does is you can load MP3 files from your library, or you could record something, and then you can look at the waveform, and then you can select different segments of it to loop. So this is really useful if you're making a transcription of something. If there's a really hard passage, you can repeat it over and over again. Or if you could use this if you're working on ear training. But what's really cool about this is it's got some sort of technology where you can slow things down without altering the pitch. Usually when you slow down a file, it's going to distort, and you wouldn't get an accurate pitch. This is what that sounds like. Here's a little section at normal tempo. So then if we slow it down, so at that tempo, it's a lot easier to pick out individual notes.
One other comment on AnyTune before you leave it. You can loop and slow down and do a whole bunch of other things. So you can set a section you want to practice, set it a little wider, have it loop, it'll do like a 5 or 10 second, whatever you choose as a pause between the loops. And it also has, as far as the slowdown, you can start it at 50% and you will step up 10% per until 100%.
Oh, that's really cool.
So
I
if
didn't
you
know
really
that.
want to work a passage, it's amazing, and it's free.
Always a good thing. And I don't know what apps developers are going to come up with next, but I did want to share with you a program that I made myself. When I was an undergrad, I took a class on video game production, and I felt like there really wasn't much in the way of ear training games. So I made a simple one. Let me pull it up. So the concept behind this is that we spend a lot of time tuning chords and ensembles, and we spend a lot of time talking about how we tune the different parts of a chord. But if you don't, it's good to know that tuning a major third should be 14 cents flat. But if you don't know if you're actually playing the third or not, that knowledge doesn't really help you. So I created this tool to give people practice identifying their role within chords. So how it works is it'll tell you what note to play, and then there will be a mystery chord that plays after a 4-beat count off. So you play it with the recording, and then you guess what part of the chord you played. We'll go to first level. So what part of the chord was that? Yeah. And then it gives you a reminder of how you tune that. So then if we go on to the next stage, it'll give us a different note. And that was the third. And it reminds us that that should be 14 cents flat. So as you go through this app, you start out in major. You start out with a limited number of keys, And then as you get them correctly, you can unlock more levels, which have more keys. And then once you're done with the major keys, you move on to minor keys, and then dominant. And that's what I have so far here. And this is downloadable for free on my website for Mac OS. Sorry, it's not available for PC or phones yet. But if anybody is a software designer and wants to help me with this, I can certainly use some help. Did I see a question?
When it plays the recording, do you play along? Is your note missing or is it in there?
Oh, it's in the chord, yeah. So it's a complete chord that they're playing. So that's how that works. I think that wraps it up for today. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Are there some apps that you'd like to see?
That's a good question.
Or tools you'd like to have?
I guess a tool I would really like to see is something that's just sort of recording your practice sessions in the background, and then it'll give you some sort of analysis, like maybe it's telling you, like, you know, what was the loudest decibel that you got up to, what was the softest, and tell you some statistics about that, maybe the percentage of, you know, of the time that you spent practicing that you were actually playing versus doing something else. Yeah, but I mean, who knows what people are going to come up with. So thank you so much for coming. I hope that you learned something new, and have a great day.